house on that Sunday?
Quite a long time. It actually went into the early hours of Monday morning, so at least I got there around 2 in the afternoon of Sunday. I don't think I left there until 2 or 3 o'clock the next morning of the 9th.
Over the course of the time that you were there that day, did you have any interactions with Ms. Heard?
Yes, I certainly did. Yeah.
Can you describe those for us, please?
Yes, not too much initially. She was very, as I said, quite hysterical and crying a lot, and Jerry Judge was taking care of her, keeping her calm. Later in the evening, it was suggested that Ms. Heard go to a local hotel, to leave the house, go to a local hotel, which then became a suggestion that she go back to LA. And that's, I think, when I started interacting in terms of, at some point, I volunteered to travel with her to LA.
How did Ms. Heard respond to the suggestion that she leave for Los Angeles?
She was resistant to both of those suggestions, very resistant. She really didn't want to go and said, I can't leave, I can't leave. You know, it'll be the end if I leave. Those sorts of things. And so it was just, these went over a few hours. Those negotiations, if you like, and eventually Ms. Heard agreed that I would fly with her.
And did you, in fact, fly with her?
I did, on Monday the 9th.
Okay. Sticking with Sunday, when you were interacting with her on that Sunday, how close were you to her?
Very close, you know, like very close, in front of her.
And do you recall observing any injuries on Ms. Heard?
No, none whatsoever.
Did you notice anything unusual about her physically at all?
No, I mean, she was obviously crying a lot. She had red eyes, and but no, otherwise no.
Okay. So what happened the following day, that Monday, March 9th, I guess it would be, 2015?
Right. So, I mean, it was eventually agreed that I would fly with Miss Heard, so I had to at some point go back to my apartment, drive to my apartment to pick up my passport, which, funnily enough, I hadn't brought with me, and some clothes, you know, a bag to take. So I think I left the house early hours, as I said, 2, 3, may have been a bit later, a.m. I drove back to my apartment, which was 30 minutes drive south, picked up those things. I mean, I didn't know how long I was going to go for, but I knew I was traveling, so passport, quick shower, pick up a bag of clothes, and I drove back up to the house. I don't recall exactly what time I arrived there, but I know we had to leave. All the arrangements were being made by the travel agent, and Jerry Judge was liaising with them to make the flight arrangements, and which I believe was going mid to late morning. So I think we had to leave the house around 7 or 8 a.m. that morning, Monday the 9th.
And did you travel to the airport with Ms. Heard?
Yes, we were driven.
How would you describe her demeanor that morning?
Calmed down a fair bit. She was mostly on the phone, to be honest, for pretty much the whole of that car journey, to various people, one of which I believe was Mr. Depp.
Do you recall her saying anything on the ride to the airport about what had happened the night prior?
Nothing really mentioned in that as way of an explanation, no.
What happened when you got to the airport, if anything?
We were running a bit late, but I remember that. Luckily, we were traveling first class, so the driver knew to pull up to a kind of VIP, for want of a better word, VIP check-in point. And so the car got pretty close to where the desk was. Miss Heard was still on the phone. And so we sat there for a bit with the driver, and Miss Heard was talking, I don't know who to at that point. And I was thinking, we need to make this flight actually pretty soon because we were already running a bit late. So I decided to go in, maybe I can go in, check in our bags ahead, and then come back and get Miss Heard. She should be finished by then, which is what I did.
And did you eventually get on the plane?
Eventually we did. It was a close call, to be honest.
Once you were on the plane, did you have any conversations with Ms. Heard?
Yes, I mean, not initially, which took some time in the bathroom. She was on the phone again to the point where the cabin crew had to sort of tap on the door and say, we need to leave now. Everybody needs to sit down. And she did come to sit down, after 10 or 15 minutes in there. And so eventually, and luckily, as I said, we were flying first class, which was lovely. She was in the window seat, I think it was 1A, 1B window seat. I had the aisle seat. And finally, we could both sit down, and in way of conversation, wasn't a great deal, to be honest. I did sort of say, finally, so what happened? Obviously referring to the house. And, I mean, she didn't give much explanation, if any. She did say, Ben, have you ever been so angry with someone you just lost it with them? And I sort of said, no, actually, I'm pretty calm, even-tempered guy. But she did repeat it. She looked pretty incredulous that I hadn't, and she repeated it. You mean you've never lost it with somebody, got so angry with someone you just lost it with them? And I said, unless you count the sort of time when I was 14 years old and I hit the light switch in my bedroom because I wasn't allowed out that night or something. With a person, no, never. And that was pretty much the end of the conversation. She dropped it then.
How would you describe her tone when she asked those questions of you?
To me, incredulous, would be fair to say. Surprised that I hadn't lost it with somebody.
Does anything else stand out about that flight?
It was fairly calm. After that, it was calm. But I mean, we were both exhausted. I certainly was, and I think I can't remember eating either. Just slept most of the flight until obviously we landed, or were close to landing.
At any point, did you observe anything about Ms. Heard physically on that flight?
Yes, I did. Right toward just before we landed, I noticed some marks on her arm, her left forearm.
How would you describe those?
Long, kind of uniform, evenly spaced, sort of long, thin marks. Very uniform, in fact.
And when did you first notice those?
On the plane towards coming into land, we're gathering the stuff up. I noticed them then.
Okay. What did you do after you landed in Los Angeles?
Once I'd fired up my phone on landing, I saw the arrangements that we would be picked up by one of Mr. Depp's security personnel, who I think was Travis McGivern. So I made contact with him, and he met us in the place that had been arranged. We walked through the arrivals lounge and met him at the end of that. Got in the car with him and drove to the Eastern Columbia building.
And how would you describe Ms. Heard's demeanor in Los Angeles?
Yeah, pretty calm. I mean, she seemed, obviously a lot calmer from the house, but she pleasant towards Travis, certainly in the car. Obviously, they knew each other. When we got to the building, She was kind enough to show me around the apartment I'd never been before. She showed me around the penthouse, a little tour. She wrote down some restaurants recommendations because she knew I'd be staying a few days probably. So, and I don't really know LA that well. So she recommended a few restaurants. And then I left. I said, if you need anything, as usual, as I always did, need anything, give me a shout. I'll be staying fairly close by. Just give me a call or a text.
How long were you in LA?
Less than a week. I think I flew back to Australia on the 14th or 15th. So about 5 days, 6 days tops.
And when you got back to Australia, what were you doing?
Pretty much putting the house back together, repairing all the damage with the help of professional contracted vendors I brought in, and just getting the house back as it was originally.
At some point, did Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard return to Australia?
Yes, they did.
Were you there when they returned?
Yes.
Did you observe them interacting with each other after they came back to Australia?
Yes, yeah.
And how would you describe their interactions?
Again, initially, those first few days were certainly very pleasant, almost honeymoon-like, I would say. It strolled around the grounds a bit, and they seemed fine with each other.
Did you ever observe any arguments after they returned?
Yes. I mean, many. Several more, yeah.
And how would you describe those?
Not dissimilar to the London arguments in terms of the pattern of those, the sort of provocation and the reaction that leave the room, Mr. Depp leaving the room, going to another room, playing his guitar, seemed to follow the same pattern as that, as I witnessed those 2 times in London.
All right. Nothing further.
All right, cross-examination.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So to understand your testimony, is it your testimony that Amber and Mr. Depp arrived together in Australia in February of 2015?
Initially, together I don't think so. I think Mr. Depp arrived ahead of Ms.
Right,
Heard, actually.
Mr. Depp arrived first, correct?
I think so, yeah.
And isn't it true that Ms. Heard, Amber didn't arrive until March 5th, 2015 to Australia?
I can't remember the date she arrived, to be honest.
But she could have arrived March 5th, 2015. Isn't that true?
Objection, foundation, speculation.
I'll allow it if you can answer it.
Sorry, what was the question?
Ms. Heard could have arrived on March 5th, 2015, correct?
It's possible, I suppose.
And isn't it true then that you didn't see any arguments between Ms. Heard and Mr. Depp before the injury that occurred to Mr. Depp's finger in Australia?
I saw them argue.
You saw them argue when they came back, in April, correct?
I certainly saw them argue in April and through most of the months they were there, yes.
But you don't remember, you can't recall any arguments in February or March of 2015 between Ms. Heard and Mr. Depp, correct?
Specific days? Not necessarily, no.
Right, so that you don't know, you can't say that there were any arguments before you came to the house on March 8th, 2015, correct?
I think there were. I mean,
Excuse me, say that again?
I think there were.
But you don't even know when she arrived, correct?
Specifically, the day, not necessarily, no.
Okay. And you said when you arrived at the house on March 8th, when you eventually found the finger, it was wrapped in paper, is that right?
Wrapped, I mean, it was loosely wrapped. The paper was opened by that point. The blood had dried up and it was sitting in the sort of nest of this paper, yes.
So like someone had put the finger in a piece of paper?
I don't know. I mean, it was in that piece of paper.
It was in a piece of paper, okay. So, but again, like someone had wrapped it up, is that right?
I don't know. It was within that scrunched up piece of paper, kitchen paper, tissue.
So it was in kitchen paper, is that right?
Or tissue paper. It was white with a lot of blood on it.
So like a paper towel?
Like a piece of kitchen towel.
When you say kitchen towel, our language is made, even though we both speak English, I may stay a little different. It's like a paper towel?
Yeah, like kitchen paper, kitchen towel. Yes,
Okay.
like a tissue.
And was there that sort of paper towel in the kitchen at the house at the time?
Yes, in both areas of the kitchen and the bar.
Okay. You said you were in Australia starting in February of 2015, correct?
Correct. I arrived on the 4th of February.
And Mr. Depp arrived sometime after that, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Did you see Marilyn Manson while you were there?
No, I didn't.
You don't know if Mr. Depp was with Marilyn Manson in late February, early March 2015?
Objection,
I
foundation,
didn't-
speculation, relevance.
I'm just asking if he saw, he said he saw him every day, so I was asking if he saw.
I'll allow the question if you can answer it, that's fine.
Marilyn Manson didn't come to the house.
And-
I didn't see him at any point.
Do you know if Mr. Depp left to be with Marilyn Manson?
I don't know. I didn't always know where he was going. If he went out, it was either to work or the security would go with. I wouldn't generally go. In fact, I don't think I went out with him at all in Australia.
And you didn't go out with Mr. Depp at all when he was in Australia, correct?
I don't recall it. I saw him on set once or twice. Yeah.
So you don't know what Mr. Depp was doing in Australia unless you saw him at the house or on set, is that right?
I saw him at the house, yes, every day.
But you don't know what Mr. Depp was doing when he left the house, correct?
Generally going to work on Pirates of the Caribbean 5 filming, yes.
Were you with him?
No, but the security with him, and I had to liaise with him for when he would go and when he would come back for the driver, etc.
But you weren't there when Mr. Depp left the house, correct?
Generally, I didn't leave the house with Mr. Depp on those days, no.
And I just want to make sure, I want to be clear, there were two kind of periods that Mr. Depp was in Australia in 2015, right?
Sorry, say again.
Mr. Depp was in Australia from sometime in February 2015 until about March 8th, March 9th, when he injured his finger, is that right?
Correct, yeah.
And then Mr. Depp left Australia too, correct?
At some point, he flew to LA, yes.
And then Mr. Depp returned to Australia on April 21st, right? 2015.
Okay, that sounds about that time. I don't know the specific date. I don't recall.
And the filming of Pirates of the Caribbean 5 continued filming on April 21st, right?
Objection,
That
foundation, speculation.
I didn't get, oh, sorry.
There's objection.
You recall testifying to that in the UK?
I'll overrule
Which
the
bit,
objection
sorry?
if you can answer it.
That the filming of Pirates of the Caribbean 5 continued filming on April 21st, 2015.
I wasn't involved in the filming schedule. I didn't know when it resumed, to be honest. I knew Mr. Depp would come back to resume filming, for sure.
You didn't live with Mr. Depp in his house in Australia, correct?
Live with? No, I wasn't resident there.
Now, when you arrived at the house, you saw a significant amount of damage, correct?
Yes, through the course of, after I arrived, yeah.
Okay. And the scene was chaos, correct?
Chaos, I mean, there was a fair amount of damage.
The house was wrecked,
There was a lot of damage in the house, yes.
and the house was not in a good state, correct?
Asked and
There
answered.
was a lot of damage throughout the
You
house.
gotta object first, and then you have your objection, Mr. Mars.
Objection.
Stand, and it helps. Okay. I'll overrule the objection. Go ahead. Next question.
Okay. And you said there was glass on the floor, correct?
In a few areas, mainly predominantly in the bar, yes. Down in the lower ground floor, correct.
Okay, and there was blood on the walls, correct?
In various places, blood on the floor, blood on the walls.
And there was blood on the walls throughout the 3 stories of the house, isn't that right?
No, I wouldn't say that was the extent of it. There were smears up the staircase going up to the master from the main level. There were smears and drips on the carpet.
So there were smears from the master level up to the bedroom area? I mean, from the main level up to the bedroom area, is that right?
Up to the 3rd floor, yes.
Like someone had walked from the main floor up to the bedroom floor, correct?
There was blood going up the steps, up on the staircase, and some on the walls, smears where you might have done that.
As if someone was walking from the main level up to the master bedroom, correct? Is that what the blood was like?
Yeah, maybe, I don't know.
Okay.
Or down. I mean,
Up or
there was
down, but
blood
from the
on
main
that
level to
staircase.
from the main level to the 3rd floor, correct?
Correct, yes.
And you said the sofas were damaged, is that right?
One sofa in that sitting room, which was just off the kitchen, was quite an open plan thing. So off that, there was a sofa with a large TV on a wall-mounted TV in front of that sofa.
And the sofa was on the main level, correct?
Correct, just by the main kitchen, exactly.
And where the sofa was damaged, was that with what?
Blood.
Blood. Okay. And the lights were damaged?
Some lamps, a couple of lamps, yes.
Okay. And there were bottles of alcohol in and out of the fridge, correct?
Sorry, what do you mean?
Did you see bottles of alcohol in and out of the fridge?
Yes, I mean, there was, I don't completely understand what you mean.
You saw that, correct?
There was alcohol bottles, yes. There was, in the fridge, I mean, there may have been a bottle of wine, I don't know.
And the floors were ruined, correct?
Ruined, I mean, there was a lot of damage on the floor, down in the bar area and the staircase and on the main floor area, on the wooden parquet floor, correct.
And the floors were going to have to be sanded, correct?
I eventually got them sanded, yes.
Okay. And it took, you were there, I think you testified, it took you about 12 to 13 hours in the house cleaning up, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you said that there was, is it your testimony that you didn't see any of the paintings damaged?
The existing paintings from the owners from the house, no, none of them were damaged.
You didn't see any paintings with a painting of a penis drawn on it?
I did not, and thankfully that was something I didn't have to replace.
Do you know if anyone else saw
painting.
that?
Objection, speculation.
I mean, I would have seen it.
When there's objection, Mr. King, you
I'm
just
so
need to
sorry.
stop, that's all
I'm
right.
sorry.
All right, if you stand, we can see you better when you do that.
Understood, Your Honor.
Okay, I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Okay. And you said that Jerry Judge was at the house, correct?
Correct.
And he's the head of Mr. Depp's security, correct?
Correct.
And Dr. Kipper was at the house?
Yes, he was.
And Debbie Lloyd was at the house as well, correct?
Yes, she was.
Okay. Now, you understood that Mr. Judge saw scratches on Ms. Hurd on March 8th, correct?
Objection, hearsay, speculation, foundation.
All right. I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
Did you have, the cleaning lady was going to be coming to the house, correct?
The housekeeper,
Yes, the housekeeper.
Adele, the resident housekeeper. Yes,